Open your eyes. Open your eyes. Wake up, Link.
It's hard to believe. It's been 5 years since this game released. Where's the time gone? A lot has changed in 5 years. Or more precisely, the more things change, the more they stay the same. The game had quite the history getting to its release date. It was first unveiled at E3 2014. We just saw a little tease of the character who appeared to be Link, but didn't look recognizable by any stretch of the imagination. IG Enuma said no one said that was Link, which caused many to speculate. But then Enuma said that he was joking and it was Link. You can't even make jokes about anything without fans overreacting. Look what happened with WandaVision last year. The game was once again directed by Hidemaro Fujibayasha, who even states the game was intended for a 2015 release for the Wii U, but was then pushed back to 2016, and then again to March 3rd, 2017, though that was mainly so the game could launch with the Switch. I distinctly remember buying my Switch that night, going home, going to bed, and then waking up and playing as much as possible. But we got some history to go over. IG Enuma felt the series needed to be reworked if it was to remain relevant in the coming decade. He assumed his team, consisting of the previously stated Fujibayasha and Takahiro Dota, who served as the technical director. The entire game is based around two conceptions. 1. Create an open-world environment, and 2. Rethink the conventions of Zelda. The process had already started in A Link Between Worlds. The team submitted hundreds of ideas. One idea had Link with an artificial arm that would be capable of transforming into items. This idea, based on early looks, seems to have been reworked for the upcoming sequel. One of the ideas seemed to be Link facing off against an alien invasion, essentially going full, should I say Dragon Ball or Naruto? I guess both technically work. Or a modern day reboot of the series that would have had Link traveling on a motorcycle, which I'm glad was scrapped personally. Or Hyrule Wars, where Link would traverse war-torn lands while avoiding laser beams. This idea seems to have spawned the Guardians. The team looked to redesign Link and basically show that this was a new Link, and a new Legend of Zelda. Fujibayasha wanted to create a world where players could progress through the world, spot interesting terrain, and decide how they wanted to explore it. The team actually created a 2D prototype of the game to show what they wanted to achieve. Zelda's always had the idea of a world to explore, whereas the previous games were limited by the technology available at the time. The idea with this game was that you could go anywhere at any time. After all, the original Zelda had an open-endedness to it, which I'll touch on in a minute. Using Zelda's headquarters home of Kyoto as a guideline, the team set out to create a world that followed 3 rules: distance, density, and time spent. How large would the world be? How long would it take to fully explore? And finally, how much time would players want to spend on an area? Each was designed to give you a reason to explore, and you might just discover something. With the music approach, they decided to go with an ambient feel to reflect the world. They enlisted help from Monolith Soft, who developed the Xenoblade Chronicles games, as they had experience developing open-world titles. Before I cover the story, I'll talk real quick about the game's opening segment, the Great Plateau. Like most previous Zelda games, it begins with Link waking up, and they did admit that as many traditions as this game breaks, they did keep that one. You feel a sense of vulnerability, as Link does, as he awakens with not much clothes on. All you have is this mysterious voice guiding you. I do like the little touch of Link grabbing his foot in pain if he kicks a chest open barefoot. With nothing but old clothes to wear, and the Sheikah slate you picked up, Link steps out into the world. I kid that shot to be just like the opening to the original Star Wars. Let you know everything you need to know. In fact, in a move that's very similar to the original Zelda, the first thing you can do is talk to an old man. I'll show you the example. The first thing of note is coming across the Temple of Time and looks nothing like its former magnificence. It's just a destroyed shell of its former self. That's actually pretty sad, especially if you grew up with Ocarina of Time. It pretty much makes you have to grab any weapon you can, such as a simple tree branch, or possibly think creatively. The primary purpose is to visit the 4 shrines where Link will achieve a new rune for the Sheikah Slate. Bombs, which come in 2 variety this time, round and square. Round works the classic way of bombs, whereas a square bomb can be used to just sit down and not move. Magnesis, which lets Link become Magneto, a little bit. Stasis, which lets Link freeze objects in place, and has a variety of uses. Then there's Chronosis, which allows Link to summon blocks of ice. Throughout the plateau, the old man will appear, and he basically serves the purpose of teaching Link how to survive out in the world. A brief tease of cold weather. I found the old man while climbing to the very top of the plateau, and he gave me the worn doublet. I also came across him chopping down trees and hunting for food, which are things Link can learn how to do in this game. The area is meant as a good starting point where players can learn the mechanics of the game. Now that we've talked about that, let's go into our story and characters.
The history of the royal family of Hyrule is also the history of Calamity Ganon, a primal evil that has endured over the ages. This evil has been turned back time and time again by a warrior wielding the soul of a hero and a princess who carries the blood of the goddess. With the passage of time, each conflict with Ganon faded into legend. So listen closely as I tell you of this legend that occurred 10,000 years ago.
The team debated on how to tell the story. After all, in previous games you went from point A to point B, and you could just decide how the story developed from there. But since you can go anywhere, how could you tell a story? So the answer became Link was suffering from amnesia, and thus had to put the pieces together to rediscover his past. The old man at the beginning of the game turns out to be someone very important from Hyrule's past.
To know Calamity Ganon's true form, one must know the story from an age-long past. The Demon King was born into this kingdom, but his transformation into malice created the horror you see now. Stories of Ganon were passed from generation to generation in the form of legends and fairy tales. But there was also a prophecy.
The kingdom of Hyrule 100 years ago thrived. It was protected by Princess Zelda, its knight Link, and the champions. But there came a day when Calamity Ganon would return. Gotta say, Calamity Ganon sounds like something out of a western. Despite the efforts of the princess and the champions, Ganon was able to bring Hyrule to the brink of ruin.
But nay. Ganon was cunning, and he responded with a plan beyond our imagining. He appeared from deep below Hyrule Castle, seized control of the Guardians and the Divine Beasts, and turned them against us. The Champions lost their lives, those residing in the castle as well. The appointed knight, gravely wounded, collapsed while defending the princess. And thus, the kingdom of Hyrule was devastated absolutely by Calamity Ganon. However, the princess survived to face Ganon alone.
Link, you are our final hope.
But Zelda was able to steal herself and Ganon away, thus giving Link a goal. He must rescue Zelda. Some things never change. A bit of sadness when the king moves on, as now Link is truly alone. Heading to Kakariko Village, Link will meet up with Impa. Wow, you got short of Age of Calamity as anything to go by. Impa also serves the purpose of providing the player with exposition about Link's past and where it's recommended to go. Link is given the task of freeing the 4 divine beasts that have fallen under Ganon's control. After going to Pura, who has de-aged into a child's body, let's not go into that, shall we? Which unlocks pictures on the Sheikah slate, and Link must visit these spots to reclaim his memories, thus giving the player a chance to explore. We'll go into our characters starting with Link, Zelda, the King, the Champions, their descendants, and finally Ganon. Link, our hero, wakes up with no memory of his past. This is done so the player can discover what happened along with Link. We get brief glimpses into Link's history.
Your path seems to mirror your father's. You've dedicated yourself to becoming a knight as well. Your commitment to the training necessary to fulfill your goal is really quite admirable. I see now why you would be the chosen one.
They managed to work his silence into the story, as it's mentioned that he took becoming a knight so seriously, he decided not to talk so that he could shoulder the burden. However, he shows a pretty playable side whenever cooking a meal, which would seem to be his true self, as it's mentioned that he is a big eater. Link lacks almost everything in this game that makes him identifiable. No Master Sword, no Triforce of Courage, not even his green tunic and hat. One thing that was sadly lost in Western translation is that in the Japanese text, the journals are written from Link's perspective, which provides some insight into his thoughts. Very odd exclusion. We'll come back to him as there's more to tell. He reminds me of Jack in Samurai Jack Season 5 a little bit. Zelda, our heroine, is once again serving as both the barrier maiden who is keeping Ganon under control, and Link must go to Hyrule Castle to aid her. We actually get some insight into Zelda's unnamed mother for once. Zelda is more interested in becoming a scholar than a princess, it would seem, which would be fine, except it is Zelda's duty to seal Calamity Ganon. She has quite the motor mouth.
Look at this. I don't believe it, but I actually caught one. This delicacy is known to have very, very potent effects under the proper circumstances. Ta-da! Research from the castle shows ingesting one of these can actually augment certain abilities. We wouldn't be in a controlled environment out here, but with your level of physical fitness, you'd be a perfect candidate for the study. Go on. Taste it.
Slow down there. At first, she treats Link very coldly, which calls into mind her portrayal in the 1989 Zelda cartoon.
And stop following me!
Well, excuse me, princess.
Maybe that's why Nintendo still won't let Link talk. Once he saves her from the Yiga clan, she warms up to him, maybe even loves him. Well, we'll cover that in a bit more detail when I talk about Mipha. Zelda this time feels like a deconstruction of her usual character. She wants to be a researcher, but is tied to her usual duty as a princess. In the end, though, she is frustrated by her failures to unlock her power.
I've pleaded to the spirits tied to the ancient gods. And still the holy powers have proven deaf to my devotion. Please, just tell me. What is it? What's wrong with me?
Once the Great Calamity happens, Zelda just finally lets loose, as the shippers go wild.
I was King Rhombos Hyrule.
Ah, you see, this is why I'm glad this series finally has voice acting. After his stint as the old man, he does appear in a flashback. He is shown rather harshly telling Zelda to focus on her trading, rather than studying the Guardians.
That you'll allow me to contribute here, in whatever way I can.
No more excuses, Zelda. Stop running away from your duty. As the king, I forbid you to have anything to do with these machines from this moment on, and command you to focus on your training.
I did manage to find his diary, and it does provide more insight into his thoughts. He's too harsh, and it says his heart breaks for her, but he must act as a king and not a father. That mistake would tragically doom Hyrule. It's also mentioned that the reason he acts this way is that after Zelda's mother passed away, this was his way of grieving. It's mentioned that he was a casualty during the Great Calamity, but I am under the impression that he is giving Zelda strength while she continues to keep Ganon at bay.
100 years ago, there was a princess set to inherit a sacred power, and a skilled knight at her side. It was clear that we must follow our ancestors' path. We selected 4 skilled individuals from across Hyrule and tasked them with the duty of piloting the divine beasts. With the princess as their commander, we dubbed these pilots champions, a name that would solidify their unique bond.
These champions were tragically killed in the battle against the Great Calamity, with their souls trapped in the Divine Beast, and Link must set them free. Link will meet their successors as champions, who we will also talk about in these sections. In the original game, there wasn't as much to them as there could have been, but fortunately I will be including the DLC cutscenes from the Champions Ballad, as they help to flesh out the champions a bit more. Let's start with the Zoras, Mipha and Sidon. Mipha is our quiet, demure girl. She was said to be soft-spoken and often quiet. It's mentioned that she met Link when he was a child, but because Zoras live longer than humans, he grew up a lot faster, and those feelings turned romantic. It's unclear how Link feels about her, but it's pretty clear he did see her as a close friend, if nothing else. And this is probably the biggest shipping war Zelda has had since Ocarina of Time.
You're into shipping? Join the Navy!
Thank you. The Zoras at first don't trust Link because they blame him for Mipha's death, but upon putting on the Zora armor, they realize that he is indeed the one whom Mipha loves because the armor fits him perfectly. I do wonder what Mipha's relation with Zelda was, considering the love triangle that formed between them over Link. There are references to Gerudo being the reason why Mipha thinks it's okay to fall in love with Link. I do appreciate the scene with her and Sidon because it shows that she was close to her little brother growing up. Mipha's not a bad character, she serves her role fine, and she seems to accept Link will be with Zelda.
Save her, Link. Save the princess. Save Princess Zelda. Father, are you well, I wonder? I want you to know I have always followed my heart. I'm sorry I made you worry. I wish I could see you again. Even just once more.
Her little brother Sidon proved to be quite the popular character. Link meets him first when heading up to Thors Domain.
Say hey there, young one. Up top, above you. Pardon the entrance, but you're a Hylian, aren't you? I was hoping perhaps you'd have a moment to talk.
Yeah, that pretty much sums him up perfectly. Sidon was a young kid when Mipha died, so you can tell that he feels compelled to live up to her memory. He's one of the only Zoras who defends Link, as he knows it wasn't Link's fault that Mipha died. I like his part of helping Link get to the Divine Beast, and his dialogue afterwards just helped make him a fan favorite. Next, we'll talk about the two Ritos, Rivali and Tebba. Rivali reminds me a lot of Falco from Star Fox. In fact, his introduction quote sums him up quite well.
Impressive, I know. Very few can achieve a mastery of the sky. Yet I have made an art of creating an updraft that allows me to soar. It's considered to be quite the masterpiece of aerial techniques, even among the Rito.
And his attitude towards Link is pretty bad. Though he does seem to respect Zelda to a degree, he is very rude and condescending towards Link.
But let's not, pardon me for being so blunt, let's not forget the fact that I am the most skilled archer of all the Rito. Yet despite these truths, it seems that I've been tapped to merely assist you. All because you happen to have that little darkness-sealing sword on your back. I mean, it's just asinine. Unless you think you can prove me wrong? Maybe we should just settle this one-on-one.
Link doesn't say anything, which according to Rivali's journal, where he mentions getting frustrated at Link staying silent. On the positive side, he's shown to take his training very seriously. it's shown that his death at the hands of the Blight Ganon has humbled him, to an extent, as he now finally seems to show Link at least a little respect.
I do suppose you've proven your value as a warrior. A warrior worthy of my unique ability. The sacred skill that I have dubbed Rivali's Gale!
I haven't seen Rivali get a lot of hate, or at least not to my recollection. I suppose the fact that his champion ability is the most used of the four evens it out.
After all these years, I simply must admit the truth. Even without the power of flight, Link made his way to this divine beast, and accomplished something that even I could not. Guess I was wrong about how lucky he would be. I hope that luck holds out, Link, for everyone's sake.
Tebba doesn't get as much screen time as much as the other new champions, but he's shown to be a mirror to Rivali. While Rivali is arrogant, Tebba is merely stubborn. Tebba is also skeptical of Link, but grows to be genuinely impressed with Link's skill. Tebba also has a wife and son who he is shown to be very protective of. He also is shown to respect his predecessor a great deal and aspires to be a warrior on par with Rivali, but you might want to keep your expectations in check. His section of helping out Link is probably the most aerodynamic part of the new champions, and it's probably the most fun. Tebba is ultimately shown to respect Link a great deal, and aspires to make his son a warrior like Link and Rivali. Now for the Gerudos, Urbosa and Ruji. Urbosa, as we see, was something of a big sister/mother figure to Zelda after her actual mother died. Reading her diary, Zelda's mother was a dear friend to her, and took to looking after Zelda after she died.
Or...
Urbosa! What was that? Did you feel that? Wait, what? How did you... What are you doing here? What's so funny?
Yeah, that sums it up perfectly. She's a proud warrior race kind of character. She generally treats Link with respect. In fact, she even seems to support Link and Zelda getting together, as some of her diary implications are to be taken. Urbosa is generally shown to be protective of Zelda, as seen in her Champions Ballad flashback. She takes a personal offense to Ganon having been a Gerudo.
It was written that Calamity Ganon once adopted the form of a Gerudo. And that will make this victory all the more satisfying. I like that. Now I can take this personally.
Ruji is the child leader of the Gerudo. After her mother died, she was tasked with leading the Gerudo, though it's obvious she's a little too small to wear the Thunder Helm. She sees through Link's disguise but doesn't expose him since she acknowledges he is there to help her people. Her section of helping Link is probably the most challenging since staying close to her on the sand seal is much harder than it appears.
Oh. Phew.
Finally, that leaves us with the Gorons, Daruk and Yanabo. Daruk is the big friendly giant. He's fun-loving and acts as the big brother to the rest of the champions.
I may not know a whole lot about this Calamity Ganon thing, but mark my words, I'll protect this land of ours to the death. Right, little guys?
But yet is naturally the toughest of the champions. He seems to act like the unofficial leader of the champions, as seen when he directs the champions to their divine beasts, much to Rivali's chagrin. Though he also has his fear as seen when he is scared of dogs. He's also the one who gets to see him with his successor, and it's a nice moment.
Hey, look at that. Still going strong indeed. Ha!
Speaking of which, Yonobo starts off as a big coward. But despite that, he knows that what he has to do, which is to help Link, and thus essentially shows the greatest courage of all by going along anyway despite being afraid. Still though, I suppose his development is fine enough for what it is, and the new champions are shown to be worthy successors to their predecessors in various ways, and that's what really counts. Now for Ganon, or as the game calls him, Calamity Ganon. He's not really much of a character in this game. He's portrayed as more of a malevolent force of nature, but you can see him swirling around Hyrule Castle. Anytime you come across malice, that's a piece of Ganon that's still left over. When Link first enters Hyrule Castle, Ganon seems to recognize him. It's reminiscent of the first game. You have to go around Hyrule and get tools to fight Ganon. I suppose at this point all that's left is to demise his curse in its rawest form, and whatever is left of Ganondorf is long gone. Although Breath of the Wild 2 seems to be suggesting that perhaps this Ganon is merely a manifestation of the real one. Time will tell. Recovering Link's memory is a task you can undertake. After all, it serves as a way for the player to discover these things as well. In fact, the final memory features an unexpected cameo from a certain character. Pretty obvious who that is. It's perhaps the closest we get to Zelda confessing her feelings for Link.
Great Dekutri, I ask of you, when he returns, can you please relay this message? Tell him I...
Now then, words intended for him would sound much better in the tones of your voice, don't you think?
Ah, what a cock tease. Now where does this game take place? According to Nintendo, it's a sequel to all prior games. There are clearly references to the previous games that took place in different timelines.
Whether skyward bound, adrift in time, or steeped in the glowing embers of twilight, the sacred blade is forever bound to the soul of the hero.
Nintendo apparently decided, screw it, the timeline stuff is getting confusing. So we'll just vaguely set it after all the other games, so that we can fit in wherever we need it to. Some think the game takes place in all three timelines. They all reconverge at this point, thus allowing a straightforward timeline. Yeah, sure. Nintendo said they won't officially reveal it, but I'm sure they'll change their mind someday. Breath of the Wild continues with the Skyward Sword style of a middle ground between cel-shaded and realism. The game was developed with the Wii U in mind, thus the graphics are pretty much grounded for that console. After all, this game did start development in 2012 with a 2015 release date in mind, so in that regard, Breath of the Wild does disappoint a little bit when it comes to visuals. But ultimately it doesn't matter as the art style worked for what it is. It really looks like a painting come to life. The voice acting on the other hand is not horrendous, but it's not excellent either. Patricia Somerset and Amelia Gotham sound incredibly nervous at times, which does fit with their characters, I suppose. Several voice actors like Sean Chiplock and Elizabeth Maxwell would go on to play other characters. Sean Chiplock played Spider-Man in the Marvel's Avengers game, and Elizabeth Maxwell will go on to play Khalifa in the Dragon Ball Super dub. A lot of voice actors played multiple parts, but that's usually due to budget. Everything about the Breath of the Wild world feels alive, even for a decayed land. Every area feels unique, a variety of locations. Whenever Link is in a cold area, he will freeze, or he will look mildly uncomfortable when the heat starts to get to him. The Switch version does upscale the graphics to 900p instead of 720 on the Wii U, and the Switch version does run a little better than the Wii U version. However, the lack of 60 frames per second is very noticeable. I do wish Nintendo would figure out a way to prioritize performance, but it seems they got a ways to go with that. That being said, not everything was perfect. This one guy tended to fade into the ground whenever I talked to him. What's up with that? But I suppose now is the time to cover the big part of the game, the gameplay. For starters, Link doesn't have the typical starting sword and shield anymore. You have three weapons, a sword, a shield, and a bow. Well, what makes Breath of the Wild stand out from other Zeldas is that weapons will break down over time. The more powerful the weapon, the longer it will last, but when something starts to break, I find it best to just use the weapon because when it breaks, it does twice as much damage. There's a variety of weapons you can get. For example, you can get the Champions weapons, but I found it best to put those on display in my house. More on that soon. For this, Link is now much more versatile than he's ever been. One of my favorite maneuvers is the perfect dodge. When dodging at just the last moment, time will slow down, and Link can quickly get in a flurry of blows. This comes in handy, especially when doing the test of strength. There's also the shield parry. that will allow Link to stun an enemy and then attack them. At first, when confronting enemies, I found that doing the direct approach didn't work with my low health. So I instead had to run away from battles, basically live to fight another day. Other times you can find an enemy camp. You can do things the direct way, or you can be a little sneaky about it. I took out an entire base with a well-timed fire arrow. Or here, where I managed to send a boulder down, even though I fell with it. Yeah, I meant to do that. Like in Skyward Sword, Link has a stamina meter, which is now used for more than just running very fast. It applies to everything Link does, such as swimming or climbing. More on that in a minute. The way Link gets pieces of heart is also different than usual. Link can now trade spirit orbs for heart pieces or stamina wheel increases, so take your pick on what you want. Link can now jump, and the game makes a lot of use out of the paraglide item, which lets Link glide to wherever he wants to go, and you're going to be using it a lot. Early examples can be found with the Dooku Mask in Majora's Mask, or the Dooku Leaf in Wind Waker, or even the Sailcloth in Skyward Sword, just finally perfected here. Link is like Spider-Man. He can climb any kind of surface, and you're going to be doing this a lot when you want to traverse the land. Of course, Link's climbing is limited by the stamina meter he has. You gotta get used to climbing, as a lot of what you're looking for will be higher up. To elevate this, there are methods around this, which I'll get into later. The world of Breath of the Wild is large and vast, and you're going to need a transport, which is where horses come into play. Link can find and tame any horse, but since I had the proper amiibo, there was only one horse for me. Good old Epona. Why were you locked behind an amiibo? Getting Epona just made me think, yeah, she's Link's one and only horse, so I have to use her. I was able to get the white horse that Zelda uses, and the big horse that Ganondorf uses. Man, this thing is a beast. But horses aren't the only thing you can ride. One Shrine Quest has you ride a deer, and I was able to ride a bear at one point, which just made me laugh. When going to new areas, I find it best to just let the horse guide you. Your horse will automatically follow the given path. It's kind of relaxing in a way. Just let the horse and the wind guide you, and you'll discover something new. Unlike previous games, there's no way to instantly summon your horse unless you get the right gear, which is irrelevant in my case since the game does not let you switch Epona's gear, which is annoying. Of course, summoning your horse is rather easy. You simply go to a stable and take it out wherever you need it. The fast travel works well when you want to get somewhere quick, but when you're just starting out exploring, it's best to just get on your horse and see where it takes you. Although one time I got Epona stuck at something. Best if I just leave you here and go find a stable. In a stark change from other Zeldas, your horse can die. I usually go to great lengths to prevent that from happening, but it actually did. Epona took a bad shot and died, but since I died mere seconds later, the death didn't register, and I immediately hightailed it out of that area after I returned. One thing you can do is feed your horse, which will recover your health. I don't consider myself much of an advocate for anything, but you take care of your animals, you hear me? When entering a new area, your first order of business should be to find the Sheikah Tower, because without that, you are entering a new area blind. So it is strongly encouraged that you look for the nearby Sheikah Towers from a high vantage point, mark them on your map, and visit them as soon as you can. After leaving the Great Plateau, I decided to head towards Kakariko Village, taking the roads as it were. Coming across a guy on the bridge, I found myself standing on the edge of the bridge, and something interesting happened. Wow, he thinks you're committing suicide, and he talks you down from it. I imagine that helped a lot of people, so good on you, Nintendo. That being said, one of the problems I have with Breath of the Wild is a lack of enemy variety. You have the basic Zelda enemies like bokoblins and moblins, but the only differences you get is what color they are, and that means how strong they are. Now, that is true of the original game, where depending on the color of the enemy, the stronger they would be. But that had to do more with hardware limitations at the time, so it's kind of disappointing they couldn't get more creative with the enemies. You do have the freedom to go where you want, but it's not recommended you go to some of the higher areas because the enemies are of much higher level. Kakariko Village is once again the main village where Link can relax and meet old faces. Impa is Link's guide, even giving Link his old champion's tunic. She also has her granddaughter, Paya, who makes it obvious she has a crush on Link.
Oh.
Well, now I want to know. It's home to many subplots, such as helping this little girl with her cooking, or this guy who lost his Kukos. But most notably, when the Shrine Orb goes missing, Link spends a lot of off-screen time with Paya. No shipping talk, please. I will say this. Going stealth mode is pretty easy and can lead to rewards, but at the end I did find out where her birthmark is.
Oh.
Ah, okay then. Kakariko Village has elements of several historic periods of Japan. It's quite aesthetically pleasing. Of course, going to new areas is often racked with danger, particularly whenever a guardian comes back to life. That's when you start running. Maybe I'll hide in the grass. For one of the first areas I visited was the central region because that was the first memory I got. The tower is surrounded by guardians. Fortunately, climbing it isn't very hard, but you have to dodge guardian laser attacks. I guess this is a leftover of the alien idea. Although I did manage to duck under a laser shot by sheer accident. Let's see that again, in super slow motion. When I went to Hateno Village, I found myself enraptured. It's nice to see a little bit of civilization I survived. An inn to stay where you can spend the night, a clothes dye where you can dye most of your clothes any color you want, shouldn't Link be dyed too, or are we not doing that? I didn't really use this, I only did it to show it off, but it's there if you want. It does pay to visit Pura, and thus get some insight into what's going on with the Sheikah Slate, and also upgrade it whenever you want. I always appreciate when Link can show some wit, give some character. I did try out some Amiibos. Using the proper Amiibos, Link can get past items from previous Zelda games. I was able to get the Tunic of Time, of Wind, Twilight, Sky, Fierce Deity, and the original Hero Tunic, along with various other items. These are nice touches, but I wish they weren't locked behind Amiibo. You can only scan an Amiibo once per day. There is a way to cheat that, reload a previous save. Only what you get is completely random. I spent up to 45 minutes just waiting to get the right kind of clothing item I wanted, or else at other times it just came on the first try. Having the Wolflink Amiibo allows you to summon Wolflink for a hunting partner. It's nice to have company. I mean, I must admit, having the complete Twilight Princess reunion made me smile. Instead of gathering hearts to recover, the way to recover is by cooking. By simply throwing a bunch of food on a cooking pot, this happens. I love his little dance. Shows how much he loves to eat. Add so many hearty ingredients and those will automatically give you full health. Which reminds me, I almost forgot that Link can find various ingredients to pick up. Pick up anything you can because you never know what it might be needed for. Fortunately, this is made super easy. I do miss the traditional Zelda item get pose though. You can hunt animals for their meat, but I never went out of my way to do this. At least not intentionally. The game never encourages you to hunt innocent animals. The only time I ever got animal meat was whenever a pack of wolves would attack me. I would defend myself. While this idea was used in Triforce Heroes, Link now has a variety of outfits to wear. The Champions Tunic, which allows you to see how much health your enemy has, which is very useful early on when you have almost no health. A lot of outfits have their own perks. The Zora armor lets Link swim up waterfalls, which is very useful. The Goron outfit, which lets you survive in heat. The climbing gear lets Link climb twice as fast, which is very useful. The Dark Link costume lets you move twice as fast at night, which is incredibly helpful. The tunics of the past are there for cosmetic purposes, but where's the proper green tunic? We'll come back to that. I do like the variety of outfits you can wear. How Link dresses is entirely up to you. Or wear nothing at all.
Feels like I'm wearing nothing at all. Nothing at all. Nothing at all.
Once you wipe out a monster camp, those monsters are gone, and most of the time you're free to take the treasure. You can wipe out as many as you want, but eventually something ominous will happen. As it gets closer to midnight, the sky will turn red.
Link. Link. Be on your guard. Ganon's power grows. It rises to its peak under the hour of the blood moon. By its glow, the aimless spirits of monsters slain in the name of the light return to flesh. Link, please be careful.
That is such a great feeling of dread. Every monster you destroyed comes back to life. That is obviously done so the game stays balanced, and while you may destroy the monsters, it's only temporary. Presumably this is Ganon's power acting up. It's nice they were able to work in monster revivals into the plot somehow. The roads get so perilous at night that you're better off staying at a staple or waiting out the night. After all, that's typically how traveling works. Once Link gets stronger, you can brave the night. I really did love the view of Lake Hylia from the bridge. It's just breathtaking to see. Sure, there's a few enemies there, and then you come across a forest. The forest is filled with lots of surprises for you to find. It looks very closely like the ruins of a previous structure used to be here, and has eroded over time, like the Temple of Time in Twilight Princess. All this makes me want to explore Hyrule before the Great Calamity. Once I decided to take a path through Lower Hyrule, and to my surprise I came across a village. Loren Village, a fisherman's village. It's so peaceful here. There's no main plot relevance, but it was a nice little discovery the first time I played this game. I even took the time to watch a family eat dinner, which made me feel really at ease. The village is home to several side missions, including this one. What's for dinner? Is that an intentional reference to this?
I wonder what's for dinner.
I wonder what was for dinner.
Oh boy! I'm so hungry, I could eat an Octorok!
Oh, that! Yeah. The first path I took was to go to Thors Domain, and getting there was quite a trek. Clearly recommend to be the path you take first if you decide to free the divine beasts. The road is perilous as there are many Lizaflows that will shock you with lightning, and with Zero I noticed that depending on how you die, the text of the game over screen is different. I thought that was a nice little touch, but it's actually a kind of a nice little trek as you have to take this path on foot, and that causes you to have to adapt to your surroundings. Thors Domain is quite breathtaking. It consists of a single extensive structure surrounded by what else? Water. The Zora, some remember Link and treat him as a friend, while the older ones regard him with contempt as they blame him for Mipha's death. Of course, up top among the waterfalls is a Lionel. At this point, Link must avoid combat at all costs, and simply sneak around and grab the shock arrows. It's actually a nice little tense moment as it makes you have to rely on your other senses, but I'll be back. It's really the area around Thors Domain that makes it interesting. It's all about surprises. Rito Village is home to the Ritos. In this game, the Ritos are separate from the Zora people, for the better, as the Zora evolving to Rito never made much sense anyway. While in Wind Waker they were humans with bird features, in this game they are humanoid birds. Now that's probably due to an art shift. But one of the more notable Rita you'll encounter throughout the game is Kaz, who typically leads you to Shrine Quest and always plays this one song. Why does the knight not look like Link? I wonder. You'll grow attached to Kaz, whether you want to or not. Hyrule Mountain is, well, it's very cold, filled with snow and ice. Because what else would it be? If anything, I found that while exploring, I came across a hot spring. And when I found a place to do shield surfing, which is actually a lot of fun while you don't get anything worthwhile, it's a fun little distraction if you want to take a break from everything. Some of the shrines around here are a bit annoying to find. One involves taking a snowball and making sure it rolls down to the door where I can smash it open. How would anyone know how to do that without a guide? That being said, I do love the physics of the snowball getting bigger. It's well done. Before heading to Gerudo Desert, I took the time to rescue some travelers, even though the one who sent you was a coward who couldn't do it himself. Show some dignity, man. I hate traversing the desert simply because, depending on the time of day, the weather will either be too hot or too cold. Of course, to even get to Gerudo Town, Link has to disguise himself as a girl. All this makes me want a Legend of Zelda / Final Fantasy VII crossover, simply because Cloud also dressed as a girl. Link's kind of bashful about it. I do wish that after clearing the Divine Beast, Link could walk around the town without his disguise, but I guess rules are rules. It's home to many side quests, and most notably this one with Bozai, who is pretty pathetic and tries to hit on Link when disguised as a girl. Of Of course, another reason I hate going through the desert is because sandstorms happen often, and then it becomes hard to see where you're going. One little thing you have to do is visit the Yuga clan hideout. I haven't mentioned them yet, but sometimes when talking to an NPC on the road, it'll turn out they are Yiga in disguise and try to kill you. The way Link invades the hideout, using bananas to distract him is just goofy enough for me to love. Of course, if they spot you, one swing of their sword and you're dead. The fight with Master Koga is pathetically easy, and that's kind of the intention. The guy comes off as a complete imbecile. Is this the same guy from Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity? You could have just moved out of the way, you idiot. As I went to the Akilo region to meet with Robbie, I went to activate the tower. I found evidence of battle. This tower, this place, this was Hyrule's last stand against the Calamity. That was when I realized how each region of this game had a story. Every area. Even if you didn't notice it. Whether it's happening in the present or it's a piece of the past, you get the sense that it was probably a more refined looking area before the Great Calamity. I was really appreciative of that. I wonder what was left of civilization. There aren't many locations like this with ruined civilization in the world, but there may be one day. Makes you think, doesn't it? Up to Death Mountain. Like with Thors Domain, this is another trek. Unfortunately, the game tells you to bring fire elixirs so you don't catch on fire. Goron City is located near a volcano and has pools of lava. Fine if you're a Goron, but it would seem rather hazardous to anyone else. I do love to traverse the volcanoes that leads to the city. Compared to Ocarina of Time, which was a cave, they've actually managed to get outside. There's also Goron children, but Gorons seem to be monogender, so how do they reproduce? Maybe it's best not to think about that. Hidden throughout Hyrule are Koroks. Yeah, the little whatever they are from Wind Waker. Basically, if you see something out of the ordinary, there's a Korok waiting there, and they will give you a seed which you can use to trade for an additional item slot, which does come in handy. However, I must say they really went overboard with the sheer number of them. There are 900 seeds in the game total. Yeah, you heard that right. Granted, solving these puzzles can be rewarding, but after a while you have to wonder, is the reward worth it? The answer to that is no. I considered showing you what it was, but I decided not to bother. I'm sure it was a joke, but it's not a good one. Don't do that. I do like the Korok Forest. The Lost Woods lives up to its name as per usual.
Who is that? Did I doze off again? Well. It's you.
The Great Deku Tree. Ah, that's how you pronounce it. I know everyone gives me crap for how I pronounce names. This is why you really should do voice acting. Especially for a series like Zelda that has very complex names. But finding the Master Sword does feel rewarding, and it's trying to kill me! Actually, if you don't have enough hearts, it will kill you. Wow, Fa, you pretty much just doomed all of Hyrule. Congratulations. That's why I focused on getting hearts, which just made the moment stand out all the better. Unfortunately, the Master Sword is not at 100%. After so much use, the Master Sword has to recharge, which is kind of a new thing. I get that it's so you still have to use other weapons, but it's just an odd decision. One little side quest I took the time to do was buying a house. Yeah, actually adding more onto this house was quite fun, actually. Even if it was just grinding to get pieces of wood, which meant blowing up trees with the bombs. Am I technically destroying the environment? Well, don't worry, they grow back very fast. Taking the time to decorate the house is actually pretty rewarding. I even got a spot for Epona to stay and shelter her from the rain. How nice. Hey guys, I appreciate you helping me build Link's house, but get off my property, please. At least this also kickstarts another long-running subplot, which I'll get to later. Even before fighting Ganon, I decided to check out Hyrule Castle. What was once the proud capital of a kingdom is now a ruined shell of its former self. It's not the first time Hyrule Castle has been the final dungeon in a Zelda game, but you can actually go here anytime you want. All these speedruns of people going to beat Ganon right away are something to watch, even if it's something I never attended myself. Just looking at the remains of what was once the capital of the kingdom, it's a sad sight. You're very close to Zelda, but I feel like I don't want to go here yet. I still have some things to take care of. I was also able to find a Hylian shield in this castle. Guess it's a little worn out. So we're getting close to Link looking like himself, but we're not there yet. Instead of mainline dungeons, we get shrines and divine beasts. I'll talk about the divine beasts first. I like how each of them is named after a former sage, which if you're a longtime fan of Zelda, you'll appreciate. Unfortunately, I can't say many kind things about the interiors of the divine beasts. Typically, you have to get access to the map, then gain access to the terminals to access the main control panel. Typically, this is accomplished by tilting the divine beasts in various ways. It's really nothing you can't figure out on your own. So in this regard, Breath of the Wild disappoints. The bosses are, well, there's not much variety. Each boss is a blight of Ganon's. The Water Blight Ganon will attack using his spear. The trick to beating him is a well-timed arrow to the eye that will leave him stunned. The second phase will largely be surrounded by water, and it will send ice blocks at you, that you must then shatter with Chronosis. The key to defeating him revolves around hitting him in the eye with arrows. With Wind Blight Ganon, the battle is very similar. You just have to get into the air and use the slow time ability to fire an arrow at him, but the second phase he will summon blue objects that will basically shoot a laser at Link. But if you manage to hit one, he'll become stunned, and that's when you strike. Thunderblight Ganon is all about perfecting the dodging mechanics. When he moves in to attack you, you have to dodge and strike at the right moment. So that's why I like to do this one after I've gotten used to the mechanic. The second half will have him bring down rods that will attract lightning. The trick is to get one near him so he'll shock himself. Doing that is easier said than done though. Fireblight Ganon, the key is once again to dodge and use Flurry Rush and use your heavy weapons on him if you don't have the Master Sword. The second phase, he will summon a shield around himself, and the best way to break is to make him swallow a bomb. I do wish we had more unique boss battles. What makes them worth it is the abilities you get. Mipha's Grace will recover Link's health when he hits 0, and this comes in handy at the beginning of the game when you have so few hearts at the time. The one I went out of my way to get as soon as possible is Rivali's Gale, because when it comes to climbing, this is a cheat code. You get 3 of them, and the recharge time isn't too long. Maybe this is why people tolerate Rivali, because his ability is easily the best. Urbosa's Fury allows Link to attack with lightning. You have to charge up the attack, which leaves you vulnerable, but it's well worth it. Daruk's Protection grants Link a shield that will protect him from any attack, and it definitely comes in handy. There are various monsters you have to fight, such as the Lynels. Like I said, I avoided it on my first go-around, but later, going back, being able to fight it felt immensely satisfying. Hynixes, which are pretty simple because that big eye is wide open. Stone Taluses, which come in various variety, just whack the rock part on its back, and the Molduga, which is so simple to outsmart. Overall, you do get good rewards for beating these monsters, and the satisfaction of doing so is well worth it. The shrines are essentially mini dungeons that you can't climb inside them, and each one has you do a different task. The reward is figuring it out for yourself, even if I did have to look at a guide for some of the more intellectual ones. Some of the ones that annoyed me the most was whenever you had to use a gyro to control something. I guess this was a leftover of the gamepad implementation, mostly because tilting and turning the controller is not my idea of fun. Sometimes you have to simply challenge a guardian robot to a fight, various levels of tough. Sometimes the goal is to simply get to the shrine, such as this part where I had to clear all these gross eyes off a dragon, which was actually pretty rewarding. Getting to the end always has the monk commend you and give you the orb. One time I even came across a woman who wouldn't leave the orb because she was in love with it. Lunatic. The last one I did was going to this deserted island where Link is stripped of everything. I thought that was pretty fitting to have as his last trial. It pretty much throws everything at you to try to kill you. But at this point my hearts are maxed out and I've more than learned how to survive. Even if I was down to one last shiver of heart. So finally, what's the reward? Ah, that could only mean one thing. I made haste to the Forgotten Temple, and inside was Link's one true outfit. You know, wearing this, it kind of feels like Link's hero journey is just about complete. Now that I have this, I probably won't wear any other outfit. Or at least keep the hat, as wearing it just feels so right. And one side quest I found deeply rewarding was Tarrytown completion. Sure, it's a little repetitive, but the fact that Link can help build a town in a post-apocalyptic world just adds a nice feeling. In fact, getting a nice mix of each Hyrule race to come inhabit it is a nice touch. Even managing to arrange a wedding between two people. It's little moments like that that make it worth it. I would like to see this concept expanded upon in Breath of the Wild too. Restart civilization a little bit. Maybe restart that ranch you find, rebuild Hyrule after Ganon nearly destroyed it. It's an interesting concept. Now we'll cover the DLC editions. I was able to find the new costumes and masks they added. Not going to get into all of them, but a lot of them are nice fan service nods to previous Zeldas. Eerily, I got Majora's Mask in part 66 of recording. That ain't ominous at all, now isn't it? The first DLC pack I did was Trial of the Sword, which makes the Master Sword just a little bit more powerful each time. Just make sure that you don't die, or you'll have to redo the whole trial. Other than that, there's not much to say. The final trial is perhaps the most challenging of all because you have to fight Lynels and Guardians, and it's here that you want to build up your ancient arrows because those will wipe out everything in a second. But the reward you get is well worth it. The Master Sword is fully charged. As if this doesn't make it fully unbreakable, it will still need the charge, but it does last a little bit longer, which is kind of a cheat. One other thing you can do, level up your clothes. By finding the Great Fairy Fountains, I spent a lot of time maxing out rubies and getting materials from the 3 dragons, and every time I upgraded a piece of the Tunic of the Wild, the Great Fairy would get uncomfortably close with Link. Okay then. But hey, maxed out. This is the best set of clothes in the game. At this point, I feel like I'm pretty much set for the final showdown, but I need to do one last thing, the Champions Ballad. The Champions Ballad starts with Link having to wield this thing, which can kill anything in one hit, but you can only take one hit, which proves to be annoying. Constantly, I found myself retreating just to be able to get to a checkpoint. I died so many times. Following that, I suppose it's a good way to test your reflexes again, particularly this one where you have to glide all the way out to sea. While all this makes the Champion's abilities charge much less, unfortunately, I just wish you didn't have to fight all the Ganons again. Just seems a little repetitive. This awakens one last Divine Beast. This one is actually a little more taxing, as you have to open the last door, but I suppose it's a nice culmination of everything you've learned. One last monk, what are you going to give me? That's unexpected. Monk Max Koshia. He's basically a culmination of every enemy you've fought before. Finally defeating him, Link gets access to the Master Cycle. A motorcycle. I guess they figured out a way how to fit it in. I'll just say this, I do love using this thing, even if it does run on fuel. But I do like the last memory, showing off the personalities of the champions.
Stay just like that. Here we go. Smile. Click, snap.
One picture to remember them all by, and there was only one place I could put it. Yeah, that felt like the right thing to do. Before I go to Ganon, there's one last area I want to mention. That's Satori Mountain. As you all probably know, this was the last Zelda game Satoru Iwata worked on before he passed away, and it's fitting that this area is named after him. So peaceful and quiet. I even found the lure of the mountain. Can I ride you? I guess not. Nothing left to do but to go fight Ganon. Getting to Ganon is pretty simple when you want to actually go to him. Of course, just as you arrive, Zelda can't hold Ganon any longer. How very convenient. That red mane, implied to be all that's left of Gandor. Fortunately, since I did all of the Divine Beasts, you get this.
Now my moment has finally come. Brace yourself, Ganon, for the sting of my revenge!
This will be our final opportunity. We will not fail.
Let's go, little guy. Now, open up wide, Ganon!
100 years in the making. Hold on, Princess. Our moment has arrived.
Even with only half of his health, Ganon is still a force to be reckoned with. With the Tunic and Master Sword fully powered up and the Champion's abilities, it actually feels like they are all helping Link fight Ganon one last time. Ganon's like a spider in this game. You just have to time your movements and keep yourself going. He's a combination of every Blight Ganon in the game, but through it all, Link perseveres and manages to defeat Ganon. But that's only part of it.
Ganon. Ganon was born out of a dark past. He is a pure embodiment of the ancient evil that is reborn time and time again. He has given up on reincarnation and assumed his pure, enraged form. If set free upon our world, the destruction will be unlike anything ever seen before.
It's only fitting that in a game like Breath of the Wild that the final battle take place in the Hyrule field. But somebody did come back. Your horse.
You may not yet be at a point where you have fully recovered your power, or all of your memories. But courage need not be remembered, for it is never forgotten.
Zelda gives one last gift to Link. There's really not much to this fight. Just attack the glowing spots on Ganon with the Bow of Light and make sure you don't get crushed. I'm guessing if your horse dies, it's automatic game over. I do wish Ganon was a little bit more of a character than the force of nature he is. Hopefully the next game will fix that. So Ganon is sealed away and Zelda is set free. Good thing she didn't age in those 100 years.
I never lost faith in you over these many years. Thank you, Link. The hero of Hyrule. May I ask, do you really remember me?
I really wish Link would talk here. So in the end, that's Breath of the Wild. I can't deny, it's had an impact much like its predecessors have. The impact is just now starting to be felt. I'd rank this high in my Zelda list, even if ranking is not something I really like to do. I do wish the credits showed more of what happened to the characters you met, because that was one of the best parts of the credits in past Zeldas. So, with this, I'm all caught up. This journey I started in 2018 with the original Legend of Zelda. I've done every Zelda, aside from spin-offs. It's been quite a journey. But whenever a new Zelda game comes out, I'll be able to do it. And now, I can do some more Zelda-specific videos without worrying about not having the footage. This is usually where I do a montage of the series so far, but I think I'll save that for the next game. Thanks for joining me on this incredible journey. It's dangerous to go alone, but we're never alone.
I'm surprised to admit it, but I can accept that.
Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please hit that bell, like, and subscribe button. If you want to support what I do, consider donating to my Patreon. If you want updates, follow me on Twitter or join my Discord, which are provided in the description below. See you next time.